Everyone can measure, but you need to work on it. You need to share the results, and you need to include your people, and you need to work on it in the organization as a team.
Welcome to the Voice of Visma podcast, where the heartbeat of our community comes to life. Join us as we chat with Visma leaders and colleagues, sharing their stories, industry insights, and valuable career lessons.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Voice of Visma podcast. I'm your host Diana and today I'm sitting down with Vibeke Müller, our people director. Today we'll be talking about employee engagement in Visma and why it is so important for us. Vibeke, so happy to have you here today. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for having me.
Before we start, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. Well, so my name is Vibeke. As you know, I work as a people director in Visma. I have 2 kids. I have a husband. I have a dog. I'm based in Oslo, Norway, where I was born and raised, and spend most of my time working from the headquarters here in Visma. Basically, I think I've kind of grown up in Visma. I've been here for 12 years. I started here fresh from school, where I graduated with a master from business administration and economics, and I started straight into Visma, which was quite a different company back then. And then I fell in love immediately and never left.
That's an amazing journey, and so happy that you are still here today with us.
Yes.
And
Thank you,
doing
too.
so many great things. And speaking about great things in Visma and the projects that you are handling from people's side, can you tell us how employee engagement has evolved in Visma and why it's become such an important measurement for us?
Absolutely. I can start with the why and why it's so important. And it has been important for a long period of time. This was actually one of the first processes that we rolled out on group level in Visma. And it was, I think, more than a decade ago. So this is not a new area for us. And I think the reason for this is that people, without a doubt, I might be biased, being the people director, our number one growth drivers when it comes to succeeding in the business. Having the right people who are engaged, who love their job, and who loves to create value for the customers, that's number one, and why we succeed in Visma. So I think that's the big why. And as I said, it's been on our agenda, high on our agenda for many years already. We have, of course, changed the process because Visma is a completely different company than it was 10 years ago. The world looks very different as well. So previously, and when we started originally, we had biannual surveys. So we did this twice a year, quite extensive surveys where we ask questions about our people's engagement and satisfaction as well. What we saw around 3 years ago when COVID hit, we learned how much things change within 6 months. Just within 3 weeks, society locked down, all people were sent home. So we needed to think differently around several of our processes, and this was the most important one of them. How do we keep engagement up? How do we still keep our people motivated and driven when they are all sent home? Without that interaction and the opportunity to inspire each other. So what we did was that we then quite quickly turned around. We looked into the tool that we were using and also the process that we had. And we realized that we need to make some changes. It's not enough now to check in once in a while and see how our people are doing. We need to monitor this continuously. So we changed completely both the tool and the process, going into more pulse surveys on a monthly survey frequency. So we established that 3 years ago, as I said, in the middle of COVID. And I think we are extremely happy. Now we are luckily out of COVID, but the process still persists. And I think taking the temperature of how our people are doing and the culture on Visma as a group, but most importantly, of course, within the teams and within the companies is absolutely crucial for us. So it's changed quite a bit. And I would say it has become a much more integral part of our business. Like it's as normal looking at and discussing our employee engagement data as it is looking at our financial numbers or customer data. So I think we've come quite a far way.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it was amazing that you basically managed to react that fast and adapt on a fast pace, in that period.
Well, I think it was absolutely necessary.
Yeah. And how did people responded, like going from the biannual survey to a monthly one? What was the feedback there?
Well, I think, as in any organization, there are someone who thinks it's a really great idea, and then there are some skeptics, and that's fair enough. And I think we found this both within our employees and our leaders, because having surveys twice a year means that you often also have more extensive follow-ups and action plans, and the whole process of working with the data becomes quite big, or it can become quite big. So I think this was one of the fears, of course, in the organization, that how will we now do this on a monthly basis? We will not be able to do anything else. We will not be able to do our job, basically. So I think it was also a mind shift and a shift in how we think about employee engagement and how we work with employee engagement. And as of today, at least, I have not met a single leader that is not a big fan of the tool that we use, because it provides with so much valuable data that we wouldn't get access to anywhere else, and so much important data.
Absolutely. And speaking about the data,
yes.
What do we actually do with all this data that we have and we gather on a monthly basis?
Yeah, because it's a lot of data with 15,000 people. Well, I think we do different kind of things. First and foremost, and naturally also the most important thing, this is the basis for how we work with our culture. This is the data that indicates where we are doing really well. What should we not change when it comes to our culture, and where do we still see that we have potential to be even better? And then we make use of this to start conversations with our employees and within the teams and within the organizations to make small adjustments and improvements. And I think this is an important part as well, that the improvements and adjustments we make based on the Peakon data can be small tweaks. It doesn't have to be these huge shifts. And I think that's also part of the wonder of working with this continuously. And then what we also measure in Peakon, because we do measure a lot, we measure employee engagement from many different angles. And then one of those angles is leadership. So we also have the leadership index in Peakon, which says something about how our leaders are doing based on feedback from their employees. And I think this data is also super important, because as a leader, quite often you don't get a lot of feedback. If you're lucky, you have people that are comfortable providing you feedback, both constructive criticism, of course, and also praise. But it's not something you get a lot, so you don't always get to fill your blind spots, things that you're not seeing where you may be missing a couple of things, for instance, or where you could do even better. So I think this is important, and we see that the leaders is basically the most important driver for our people's engagement. So to give leaders also some feedback on how they're doing and how they can improve is key. And I think the important part here is that we don't measure our leaders to point fingers. We know that it's not a popularity contest to be a leader, but we do it to as I said, fill the blind spot, and then of course give them the tools and the skills to excel and further develop in their role. And then I am also really, really happy to see that the data we have in Peakon has been embraced by so many different parts of the organization. We have a group of people who have encountered what we call the Wisdom Project, where they go in and they look at super interesting correlations from a lot of different perspectives, so not only people perspective, but we have also been able to make use of our Peakon data there and found some really, really interesting correlations of our own. For instance, one particular example that I tend to speak about a lot is when our companies are going through their strategy processes, for instance, and they work a lot with where we are, where do we want to get. And sometimes we forget to think about how do we communicate this and how do we make sure that we bring our people along for this ride. And what the Wisdom Project showed with analyzing the people data and the Peakon data as well was that teams and employees who understand and agree upon and are onboarded into the strategy of the company, they work on products that have a much higher annual recurring revenue. So it's these kind of correlations that's also super interesting, and that really helps us to see some of the things that we might have overlooked otherwise. So and of course, being in the top 5% of the technology sector, because we are extremely proud about those numbers. And when it comes to employee engagement, naturally we would also want to use that to sell Visma outwards for potential new colleagues and customers as well.
That I can confirm that from an employer branding perspective,
exactly, yes.
That's definitely something that puts us ahead of the game there.
I think it does.
That's amazing. Vibeke, what other benefits do you see for the companies that measure their employee engagement?
Well, I think measuring engagement is one thing. I know there are many companies who are not doing that either. I think I read somewhere that it's only around 25% of companies that actually use technology to measure their employee engagement. So that's one thing. I think what makes a difference is what you do, again, with the data and with the results, because everyone can measure. But you need to work on it. You need to share the results, and you need to include your people, and you need to work on it in the organization as a team. So not something that should be driven from leaders or from HR. It should come.
It should come together.
Exactly, with everyone taking a part. So I think that is the big difference if you actually decide to work on it. And my strong belief, without, of course, having a lot of facts to build this up on, is that if you work on this data, you become more comfortable having conversations around things that are really great, but also things that could be improved. So I hope it leads to a more open culture where we are also comfortable giving each other feedback. And then one specific interaction is that we can also recognize in Peakon that companies where there is a lot of activity going on in Peakon, because as a leader you can respond to comments that come in and you can have dialogues. We also see that correlates quite often, at least, with higher employee engagement scores. Yeah. So, yes, I definitely think measuring is one thing. Actually working on it is another, and that is what really makes the difference.
I think that's amazing. And also looking now at how we are doing it and how we are using the tool, the transparency level that we have, it's undeniable. The thing that you can see clearly there at any time of the day, and you can interact and respond. It's something, definitely that's helping.
Exactly. It's not an option to be able to hide things under the rug. You can't, because the data and the results are there.
Only.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's, as you're saying, that leads to more transparency and openness and trust, I guess. I hope in the end as well.
I have one more question for you. You know that in Visma we proudly say about ourselves that we are champions of business software.
I really like that stating.
On that, I would be curious to hear your opinion from an HR perspective. Yes. What does that mean to you?
What does champions of business software mean from a people's perspective? I guess it can mean a lot of different things and has different angles. I think to me, first of all, the word champions, of course, stand out. And I think you don't become a champion unless you really have your heart in it. If you're not passionate, if you don't have the drive or the engagement to do what you're doing, then you're never going to end up a champion, so to say. I think that would be one way of putting it. And that resonates, of course, very well with the topic of this conversation. I think secondly as well, and maybe just as important, is the fact that you don't become a champion alone either. I mean, even individual athletes, there's always a team around it somehow. And I think we are quite good at that in Visma. Like, we have this stating also that we're better together, and that's not just something a little bit fluffy that we say. I think we actually also live it. And I had a conversation, I remember, with the colleague in the management team that I'm a part of, that said that she just came from a meeting where they have been discussing quite a tricky case. It wasn't clear who should own the process, and then she came out of this meeting and she said, and she has been there for many years. What an awesome company we work in, because you have this problem and there's no real owner of it. And what do people do? They don't lean back. No, they lean in. They raise their hand. They offer to contribute where they can, and then we fix it together. And I really agree on that. And I think that made me think as well, I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I've asked someone to help and they have responded that, but that's out of my role description, or that's not necessarily what I'm responsible for. I don't think I've ever seen that. And I think having that team feeling and people care, leaning in and contributing also outside of your own scope, makes us also be able to say that we are in fact champions in a way.
Yeah. That's amazing. And having the same mindset, it's definitely something that pumps up this statement for us. Yeah,
I think so.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing this, and I think we can put an end to our episode today. First of all, thank you for accepting our invitation to have this conversation today. I hope you enjoyed it, and
very much.
For me, it was very, very interesting to find out so many insights from the employee engagement processes that we are driving in Visma, and always a pleasure to hear about this. And also thank you for opening up on so many aspects from your experience in Visma, not only. Maybe we can do this also another time on another people topic.
Please invite me back. Thank you so much.
Super. To our listeners, we hope you enjoyed our episode today, and we hope you will be tuning into our next episodes of Voice of Visma podcast. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.